Learn from my mistake. Are you tired of hearing the same old advice when it comes to real estate? Do you want to learn from the biggest and baddest mistakes in the industry? Then welcome to Learn from My Mistake, the podcast that brings you real estate professionals from all over, sharing the biggest blunders and how to avoid them. I'm one of your hosts, Jake Remillard, and I'm joined by my partner, Baginski. We're here to give you the inside scoop on what not to do in the real estate game. From brokers to investors, we've got it all. We're not just here to tell you about our guest failures, though. We're here to help you learn from them so you can make the right moves when it counts. So buckle up and get ready to hear some juicy stories and expert advice you won't find anywhere else. This is Learn from My Mistake. New episodes drop every week. Don't miss out. Learn from my
That last one always gets me.
You recorded it and you always laugh when it comes up, like you don't know what's going to happen, dude.
It's because there was like this internal debate when I was making it, and I'm like, am I going to put another one in there? And then every time I hear it, I just relive that.
I love it. Well, welcome everyone. We are in season 2 of Learn from My Mistake podcast. As you just heard Jake say, I'm one of your hosts, Marie Baginski, with my business partner, Jake Remillard. And today our guest is Clay Hepler. Well, I just want to say helper. Like I want to reverse those letters just so you know. It's like my brain does it automatically, but hopefully I said it right. So Clay, I'm super excited to hear your story. So let's just jump right in. Tell everybody how you got started. What do we need to know about Clay?
Well, first off, I mean, when we were counting down to go live, I was thinking to myself, because I have a podcast, right? Like, I need to hire a voiceover actor. And I was like, wait a second.
Jake's voice is amazing.
This is literally Jake's voice. I was like, what? This is crazy. and so thank you for the inspiration on hiring a voiceover actor for my podcast. Yeah, that could be your second profession outside of flipping homes and wholesaling and about me. So I purchase, develop, and subdivide rural recreational land in the United States. And so we find tracts of land. There are thousands of counties, right, in the United States. We find tracts of land in rural counties, and we look at them and we find the highest and best use for those tracts, whether that's subdividing it, whether that's creating home sites out of it, whether that's splitting up to hunting tracts or a little farmlets or whatever that market demands. So we're basically employing the value add, like flipping a house, right? Yeah. But we're effectively doing that with rural recreational land. And so that's the core business. Now around it, I mean, we have a company that partners with other people in the space as well that serves as a primary capital partner. And we also have another sort of community of land investors and courses of land investors. Here's how you do this model. Yeah. But at the core basis, the focus is finding opportunities in the middle of nowhere. If you see a map behind me, this is a topographical map of the United States with little elevations and things like that. And so we focus on those off the beaten path areas and find opportunities in them.
Wow, that's quite the niche. How did you get into that?
Well, how I heard about it was, it's a long and windy story, right? And It was really an opportunistic story. And so, my background is in real estate, was doing what you guys do, right? Finding houses, flipping them, developing them, wholesaling them, right? I got into real estate 4 years ago at that point, and I joined a local company, a local mom and pop company that had like 500, 600 units. This guy had this company, and I wanted to join him. And, I was watching the Grant Cardone videos, and you got to get into real estate. And, everyone knows, right? At that point, he was like the guy, right?
Yeah.
And
so wait, you just said local for all of us. Where is local for you?
Yeah, local is Pennsylvania, Pittsburgh. And that was the kind of mom and pop market, right? And so I cut my teeth working with this guy, and we found out that, what we needed to create another revenue stream in the business, because he had all these legacy assets, these 500, 600 units or whatever it was. And we wanted to create another revenue stream. And so before that, I worked in sales, marketing at a chocolate company. And so I had that expertise of like, I know how to, do guerrilla marketing, and I know how to do cold calling, and I know how to think through sales processes and marketing processes. And so learned everything I could about wholesaling. And we built that business. We did 75 deals in our first year, a mixture of house flipping and wholesaling. And I started to learn about real estate and started to learn about multifamily properties. So along that line, that was when long distance real estate investing came out and BRRRR investing. And so I learned about the BRRRR process and bought a bunch of shitty old multifamily properties built in 1890 and 1900. Don't even get me started on those. And so I amassed a portfolio. We bought about 65 units and this would have been the third year after that. So, got into real estate, started the wholesaling house flipping company, and then was like, hey, I want to start doing this on the side, right? We ended up parting ways amicably. It was totally fine. And I started buying up apartment buildings, multifamily buildings, doing the BRRRR, going in, flipping, repost grade walls, LVP floors, white shaker cabinets, quartz countertops, granite countertops, white, all white, the disgusting fluorescent lights that everyone puts in their houses, right? My wife actually helped out and she has really good taste, so it wasn't that bad. But long story short, we started buying these multifamily properties, but along the way, she had a really stable job. And so she was a marketing professional and kind of worked her way up and then joined a kind of pseudo software company developer, and she was making a killing. And so I was on the side kind of running around Pittsburgh and buying these multifamily properties and burning them, buying them, fixing them up, refinancing them out. And all of a sudden, 2022, the day before Thanksgiving, my wife gets a call, and it is a call from her boss. And her boss tells her, this company's over. You're not getting your salary. She has a month in arrears in salary that hadn't been paid out. And the company just goes under like that. We lose that massive it gets even better. But wait, there's more.
He's like, but wait, there's more. Yeah.
So what happened was we were relying on this cash flow to pay for our lives. And she had a 6-figure salary, good salary. So I was going around and saying, hey, I'm preparing for the future, enchanted by the BRRRR process, the perfect BRRRR, like everything's good. Interest rates are relatively low. We're not having any issues, right? And what really happened was we weren't thinking about long-term CapEx. I had no experience with that. We weren't thinking about expenses. We weren't thinking about the box gutters, the copper pipes, the plaster and lath walls, the single pane wooden windows that get rotted because of all the moisture and rain in Pittsburgh. Yeah. And so what happens was you look at a P&L and you say, oh, this is going to be a really successful cash flowing portfolio. We have all these units. But in reality, because of CapEx, expenses, property management fees, you don't make any money. $20,000, $40,000 things here and there, and you just get your bank account drained. Yeah. And so I wasn't really as diligent as maybe I should have been in really looking through those expensings, thinking long term. And I don't think it was necessarily my fault, right? Because I didn't really have the experience I hadn't been in the business for that long, and I was, full of piss and vinegar and said, this is not a big deal, right? So that happens. And so along the way, I knew kind of in that summer, I started to see the warning signs on the wall, right? I needed to start making more money, right? And so I was thinking about maybe getting back into the house flipping business, right? But we bought a house in Colorado, right? And this is where it gets even better. Bought a house in Colorado, and it was an Airbnb property, over 4,000 square feet. Massive.
And what year is this at this point? Just out of curiosity.
This is 2022. This was earlier in 2022. And we bought this vacation home, basically. And we were like, oh, we're Airbnb it. We're good enough operators who know what we're doing. And long story short, we weren't good enough operators. And it didn't cash flow as well as we thought. And it was more seasonal than we thought because it was high up in the Rockies next to Rocky Mountain National Park. So along this way, I started to see sort of the writing on the walls, but her income was good enough that we're like, hey, it's okay. We can still continue to build this business.
Yeah.
And so toward the fall, I started to investigate, like, I need to make money. And we were planning on eventually moving to that house in Colorado. That was the original intention, right? Because we were like, hey, we want to live out there. We want to start a family out there. We love Colorado. She's from Colorado. And so it all sort of connects, right? But I was like, we got to make money, right? And so we get this call the day before Thanksgiving, guys. And I was like, what the fuck am I going to do?
Yeah.
I have a wedding coming up that I have to pay for because my parents can't afford it and her parents can't afford it either. We have this big mortgage that we have to pay for. We have these apartment buildings that I don't know if we're going to make it through the winter. Fucking furnaces break all the time.
Right. They're not cash flowing. There's no like security net at this point, right?
It was cripplingly stressful. And so my wife calls me and she's bawling in the middle of the day. And I said, I knew there's a problem. And she told me, hey, I lost my job. And that's when I figured I got to make some money. I have to make some money. And so it was like house flipping, wholesaling. Well, maybe not, because at that point I had a limiting mindset reasonably around getting back into that business and doing it remotely. Now, a lot of people, as we know in the boardroom, a lot of people do it remotely, right? And they crush it. They crush it remotely. And I just maybe had a limiting mindset and I wanted to try something new. And so I found land investing. And that's kind of the circuitous route to get to land investing. And it was really in the worst possible market to get into it.
That was when I asked that question originally, didn't see us taking that turn there. So I got to say, I've personally have been in some stressful situations as well. I know the type of grit and perseverance that it takes to overcome that. So, good on you. Congratulations for obviously fighting your way through that. But I'm actually going to do something that I don't think I've done before on the show, where I'm going to actually do something that a guest has asked me not to do. So earlier, when you said that you were looking at these houses that you picked up that were built around 1890, 1900, you said, don't ask. I'm here to ask. What were some of the real fuck ups that came from acquiring houses in a portfolio that are that old? I mean, most people in the country, you ask them what their buy box is, they're like, I'm not touching anything older than 1970.
Right. Brick ranch, 1970.
Yeah.
Right. And the drywall. I know those houses. I mean, what were the fuck ups is, I mean, there are just certain things that, like, one of the things that real estate investors don't necessarily think about is that, like, if you're the weather of the city impacts the property dramatically. And so if you live in the Northeast, and Pennsylvania's far enough in the Northeast that in the winter, what happens is it will sleet or rain or snow.
Yeah.
And over time, you have this expanding and contracting of walls, of bricks, of wood. And so shit wears down so much quicker.
Yeah.
And so you would have these older buildings that, some of the parts of the foundation might have fallen down. And a lot of these foundations are built on sandstone, which, if you know anything about sandstone foundations, they're porous.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you have a lot of rain, it'll go in and you'll get mold in your basement. When you asked that question, were you asking for specific examples of fuck up?
Yeah. I mean, maybe just, if you could go specific, just to kind of point it out for some viewers that may be listening now or in the future that are thinking about getting into a property in that area or something that old. Like, what were some of the specific, like, those calls that you got that were those $20,000 calls? Was it just the furnace? Was it the mold in the foundation? What else was there?
Well, I think that the biggest thing is the rehab budget. Okay, and so when you're renovating these buildings, and you say, hey, I'm going to pay $7 a square foot for, putting down my LVP, right? And I don't know, you get Home Depot. I don't know how much it is now, but it's like $350 a square foot,
right?
And maybe $350 for labor or $250 for labor, or whatever it is, right? For your LVP flooring.
Yeah.
So you say, I'm going to underwrite for that. And I can basically assume that my flooring cost is going to be 1,000 square feet in this 3-unit building, right? Per unit or whatever it is. What happens is you go and you want to open up that flooring and you realize that there are 4 subfloors underneath it because the previous landlords puts a subfloor down and got lazy and put a sticky tile subfloor, and the other landlord put another subfloor, and so you got to go 4 levels deep. Like, some of these houses with like 3-tab shingles.
Yeah.
Someone will put like a sheet of wood, and then they'll put the shingles, and then someone will come in and put shingles right over the shingles. You're like, what are you doing, man? Yeah. And so same exact thing happens. And so you're like, okay, so like, how do you prevent that? You literally cannot.
Yeah.
You cannot prevent that. Or like you go into a bathroom and you gut a bathroom and you're like, I'm going to gut this bathroom and I'm going to reframe it out or whatever. And I'm assuming that the plumbing is going to be decent.
Right.
Wrong. And because you when you're doing underwriting a BRRRR, you have to assume a certain rehab percentage, right? And so if you assume a certain rehab percentage, you might say for a bathroom, usually my bathrooms of this square footage is going to cost me X dollars a square foot, right? But then you get in there and plumbing, you're like, shit, I got to replace all these old cast iron pipes or whatever, these copper pipes or whatever, because copper doesn't rust, obviously, but these old cast iron pipes, they rust. And so you have all this shit that just adds up.
Okay, so if I'm hearing you correctly, if I'm looking at buying a sub 1940 or older property in the Northeast, either don't do it, says Clay, or B, it's like double probably your renovation budget, or you're looking at buying it at 50% ARV minus repairs instead of 70% ARV minus repairs, right? Like you have to really figure out a way to like look at the unknowns or calculate for the unknowns, because you're going to have a lot of unknowns with a property that old.
Right. That just happens, and
or just don't do it, like Clay said.
Yeah, I mean, like you don't restrict yourself, right? But it happens. Those types of things happen, and they add up. And so you say, okay, I buy 65 units in a year, and we did this in our first year, and we don't have a lot of money. Right. And we had a investor partner on some of the units, and we're stewards of this investor's capital. Yep. And so we take that shit really seriously. And long story short, like those fuck ups, like we have to own those. We have to come to task. We have to, when I say we, I mean my family, my wife and I, right? And even though she wasn't nearly as involved as I was, it doesn't matter. It's our responsibility to make that right. And so it just compounds the issues with those types of properties.
Yeah. Okay. So now moving forward, I'm just curious, are you in Colorado? Did that move happen?
No, it didn't happen. I actually sold that the house out there because it was 5 figures out of my bank account every month, because it didn't rent in Airbnb. It was a shit Airbnb market. Plus that market was totally over flooded with people. And so we were like managing that last year and managing, paying for our wedding and paying for our daily life and trying to start and scale a business.
Yeah. Too much.
And the most competitive land market that has happened in recent memory, period. Yeah. Without question.
Okay. I want to jump into land, but before we do, just one last question. Do you still have that portfolio of properties in Pittsburgh, of these older multifamily properties? Do you still own any of them?
Yeah, for sure. The thing is with the BRRRR strategy is you go in there, you force equity, and these properties are worth a ton of money. But if you're buying in a market in which your debt service is 250, 300 basis points lower than what it currently is, then the cap rates of all your buildings are going to trade higher, because of that's the interest rates with the relationship with the cap rates, like that, that spread dictates the market. And so if you are burring in a market in which you're getting on 25-year AMs, 4.5%, and 25-year AMs are 8%, your equity is literally wiped out. And so, that's the problem with private equity, of course, because these guys want to get in 3 to 5 years and put lipstick on a pig and throw it out with investors' capital. You can make a ton of money, but if interest rates go crazy in that period of time, it's going to take you a longer time to recover, because the valuation of your assets, it could be even lower than your debt service, or the cost of like trading those types of assets with realtor fees, with transfer taxes, makes it so that you're really not making any money. And so if you depreciate them even more, which we did depreciate some of them, then you have to, your basis reduces. And so you might have zero debts, zero equity, and you sell them to get them off your hands, but you still have to pay the government because you already took the depreciation.
Yeah, now you got to pay the tax.
No. So no, I still have them, right?
Are any of them cash flowing? No, I'm only kidding.
Yeah. They are cash flowing, right?
Okay.
But like one month they're cash flowing, the next month they're getting wiped out.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
All right, so we're here for it now. I'm ready to hear, like, what was this transition to recreational land? Like, that is a thing that I never would have even known. And I've been doing real estate since 2009. Like, I've never heard of anyone buying and selling and developing recreational land before. So how did you get into that?
So I grew up on a farm, and in one of the rare few, right? Grew up on a farm when I was younger, and so I understood land, I understood farming and those types of plots, and I had a skill set.
I have to interrupt. Is farming considered recreational land, though?
No.
Is that a different land use?
But
okay.
the rural nature of where I grew up, really, it's like very easy. It's like, oh, did you grow up in a 6-bedroom home? Okay, so like the 3-bedroom home still makes sense to you because you understand what the 6-bedroom home's like, even though 6-bedroom home is 40,000 square feet and the 2-bedroom home or 3-bedroom home is 2,000 square feet, whatever it is, right? So of course it's like vastly different in terms of like the space, but like the concept of land for me was really easy to grasp. In other words. So, I mean, I saw the opportunity there. It is a blue ocean. I mean, it's the least competitive niche in real estate right now, period. My opinion. I mean, there's other niches that are not as competitive, but it's the least competitive niche in real estate right now. And so I saw that opportunity and I said, I can do this. I can build a business, delusional or not, right? Which I think I was a little delusional given my circumstances.
All entrepreneurs are delusional when we start out.
Right.
That's why we start, because all we see is stars.
So I can build this business and I can figure out cash flow. I can make it happen. And so I said, I'm going to go full in. I bought 2 courses. Both of them left a lot to be desired, to be honest with you. A lot of the land courses today are built by people who are in the industry 10 years ago. And there was literally no one in the industry 10 years ago, like no one. And so it's gotten more competitive relative to that. And a lot of the house wholesalers and flippers, I mean, it's still competitive. When I say it's the least competitive on a relative basis, it's still competitive. You have to have business acumen. You got to know what you're doing. You got to understand how to pick markets, how to build out a sales process, how to have a good ops manager, all these things, hiring, firing. You guys know that, right? But it's still blue ocean. And so I saw that opportunity. And even though I had pretty poor a pretty poor course experience, educational experience, I could take my background in sales and marketing, in wholesaling and house flipping and underwriting multifamily deals, all that pain and suffering that I went through, it applied. And so I was able to build this ship. It was like duct taping a ship.
Yeah.
That's like a plane that's like going down and it's on fire and there's no engines working and we're trying to make a landing and I'm trying to duct tape that shit on the way down. And it was, I'll tell you this, it was the absolute most stressful year of my life, bar none. And I made it through. And it was the most competitive market with the worst education, not the worst, but it wasn't that helpful. And I had to piece it together. And I made it happen. And I'm here today. I'm still living. So that's good.
Yes.
But it was hard. I mean, it was real, you say the podcast has learned from my mistakes. At this point, I help people do what I do, right? And consult on a one-on-one basis and in my course, the Landman course. And the number one thing that I always say, guys, is do not quit your job to go and be an entrepreneur. It is sexy. It is cool to say burn all the boats. But I'll tell you one thing. Last year, my first year in land, it was crippling. Not like sleepless nights, crippling anxiety, mentally crippling.
You're talking my language now.
Right. And if my wife didn't go back to work, right? Yeah. And if I had a job or my wife had a job and that was our decision, she didn't go back to work, right? But because we wanted to have a kid right away. And so if I had a job and I was doing this, right, it would have made my life so much easier just to have that extra income stream. Because the months, as you guys know, some months you're just killing it. You're killing it. And then other months you're like, what happened? Yeah. What happened? And what matters is where you end up on the year.
That is truly the entrepreneurial journey. Like that is the entrepreneurial journey, right? I honestly feel like the safety net of, whether it's one spouse and a W-2 or whatever, like, I don't know. There's something about to me, there's something about burn the fucking ships and see where you land, because I think it's a true test for some people. Like you went through some shit, but you're still freaking here right now. And you might not be here if you didn't have to go through all that shit. Right?
I see what you're saying, but I would tell you that I would vehemently disagree with that, because it damaged my relationship with my wife. Okay. I mean, it's all repaired, but it was really, really hard. It was really, really hard with my wife, with my family. Like it was hell. It was really hell. And so there is something to say about burn your ships, and it could be my unique circumstances having to pay for all this stuff that was outside of the normal. Like paying for a wedding is really expensive, right? And it was, but I would say don't do it. Do not burn the ships. It's literally not worth it. And
you're definitely not the first guest to say that, by the way. So I'm not butting heads for
sure.
No, I'm just in personal experience for and I think it depends on the person, right? Like, let's say take me and my husband, for example. I am definitely a jump out of the plane, figure the shit out on the way down. I know Jake is, because Jake used to be a freaking paratrooper in the military.
I'm literally an ex-paratrooper. That was my job. So
literally, used to jump out of planes. But like my husband, no. His mentality was always like the safe and secure way to do things, right? Like he grew up New York City fireman, because it's like go get a city job, get a pension, all that stuff. So like the safety and security was so key for him, where I'm like, fuck it, let it burn and we'll figure it out. So I think it's interesting, because it depends on the personality, like what drives you. For some of us, I think we need our kind of foot to the fire to make us show up in a different way. And I'm also curious, after going through that, would you say that you're in a better state, like relationship wise with your wife now after have been through that hardship?
Oh yeah. I mean, we look back and laugh about the shit that we've been through because we say, I cannot believe that happened. We'll be able to tell our kids one day what we got through. Yeah. And the pride, I remember when the night of my wedding, and I was looking at my wife, and she was looking at me, and we were about to make an entrance to the wedding party, you know, when you sit down at dinner. Yeah. And I remember looking at her, and I remember saying, like, I can't believe we did this. I cannot believe we did this. And it was moving to have that pride that we did that. And that was something that I would say that I wouldn't want to lose that. And so, you know, to a certain degree, when I say that don't quit your job to go all in, you have those moments of triumph, of personal triumph, that you're like, I did this shit. Like this was what I did. I wasn't helped to do this. Like I did this. And that's the most fulfilling thing that you could possibly go through. But the pain there is so high that, you know, is the pain worth it? I think it was just unique for me. I think that there's a burn the ships mentality that really is, like you said, a certain personality type that can really manage that. But I think everything stacked up. But at the end of the day, I made it through. Yeah. I had one of the most proud moments of my life, standing there with my wife and thinking, like, we did this, we built it, we paid for our wedding. And so, you know, maybe you're right. Maybe I'm wrong.
No, it's not about being right or wrong. I mean, I honestly think that, let's just be honest, like, not everyone should be an entrepreneur. Like, if you're listening to this and you're not sure if entrepreneurship is right for you, maybe it's not. Like, there's nothing wrong with having a high paying salary job or low paying salary, whatever. Like, living your life to whatever means keeps you satisfied. And as long as you're happy, I'm all for it. Right. But for me personally, there's like the push, right? There's always been like the push and like the want more, and not everybody's built that way. So, you know, I have plenty of friends that are very happy with their 6-figure W-2 income. They think what I go through on a daily basis is freaking insane. Right. So.
Absolutely.
That's for sure.
I completely agree with that. And what it builds you into is the gift.
Yeah.
The person that you become through the trials that you have is what you can take with you everywhere. The confidence that you have when you walk in the room, because I did this. And I think one thing that is really important, at least for me, one thing that was important is, you know, looking back on this limited, you know, period of difficulty. That is something that I can build on for the rest of my life. And I need to cherish that too. I need to cherish that I became that person, and I can bring that into my daily life. And maybe I don't do that enough, because as entrepreneurs, we're always seeking the next thing. We're always looking for, well, what can I do next? How can I build this bigger? Instead of sitting in the moment and being present, saying, I did that. Right. And so instead of, you know, focusing on how do I get to 8 figures? How do I get to high 7, whatever it is, sit in the moment and say, man, I did that. Like, that was me. And I did that for my family. And that's something to be proud of.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that.
I'm happy that you just came to that realization about yourself on our podcast, man. That's awesome.
All right. So we're wrapping up here. Jake, what kind of final question do you have for Clay?
Clay, you mentioned earlier something, correct me if I'm wrong, Landman, is that your program?
Yeah, Landman's the podcast, the newsletter, the Landman Accelerator is the accelerator into land. And yes, that you are correct.
Nice. If you want to kind of yeah, go ahead and expand on that. If people want to get a hold of you and get into that or anything else, how do they get a hold of you?
Yeah. Do you guys know what a landman is?
Absolutely not.
No.
So this is really cool. So a landman is someone who, and I'm probably going to butcher it for those in the Texas audience, right? But a landman is someone who would go out to ranches in Texas and Oklahoma and these very large ranches that had oil rights underneath them, and they'd knock on the front door. And they go door to door to find these opportunities, to find these pieces of land, right? And so they could strike a deal up with these ranchers. And so the term landman comes from these people, and men and women. It's just the industry term. These people that go out and go in 105-degree weather in West Texas, knocking on the old rancher's door to find these opportunities. And so that's the background of the landman. And so the course is built on everything that I learned in last year and this year in building my business now to a 7-figure land flipping business, which is really a combination of all the things that I learned in the house wholesaling business and the apartment building business, how to build teams and how to take your business from zero, like nothing, beginner.
Yeah.
Never heard about land. I just learned about it on the Learn From My Mistake podcast to 6 figures in a year. And that's the entire program. And that's what it's focused on, which is why it's called the Landman Accelerator.
I love that.
Yeah. Okay. So what is that like? Can we just Google it? Is there a website that we're sending people to? How do they get in touch with you?
For sure. So Lev's website is land-man.io. And we can put those in the comments, right, or whatever, the show notes. But that's the website. And so, you can see me on Twitter and Instagram, which is my most active social media channels, and find it through there as well. But land-man.io is the website, and you'll be able to see it there.
Awesome.
Yeah. I mean, I definitely can't wait to see you in person, hopefully at the next boardroom, because I will definitely be picking your brain on what exactly does flipping recreational land look like. I know. So I'm in Arizona. I grew up in New York City, just so you know. So very big difference. But we have a second home here up in Sholo, Arizona. And there's a place up there where we take the kids, we go quadding, and it's like 60 or 70 miles of like off-road track. Right. And like, I don't even know who owns the land, but it's just there for people to like go off-roading. So to me, when you're like recreational land, I'm like, ooh, that's where I go off-roading with my 4-wheelers.
That's it.
Like, that sounds cool. But awesome. Thank you so much, Clay. I really, really appreciate your time. Thank you for being on this podcast. I hope that some people will reach out and become part of your Landman group. With that, Jake, anything else?
No, man, I'm also excited to connect. It's funny, we're all in the same group, but I haven't had the pleasure of meeting you in person. So look forward to it. And thanks for being a guest.
Guys, it's been a pleasure.
All right.